So this past week, John Cena is making the rounds as he is in his final days as an in-ring competitor as a professional wrestler. And one of the biggest stories coming out this week is how there was no plan for the John Cena heel turn. It was all for a big moment at Elimination Chamber to sell more tickets. And, well, we knew that. And, of course, when that bomb dropped by John Cena, the internet wrestling community and a lot of wrestling content creators was like, oh my God, this proves how horrible the John Cena heel turn was, how much Triple H and WWE ruined John Cena's final year. It was one of the worst final years in a wrestler's freaking life. You want to be real, son?
Be real, son. Real? Be real, son.
John Cena has the greatest final year in the history of any wrestler's career. Like, the fact that people could still complain to this day of John Cena's final year, and oh my God, WWE fumbled it, oh my God. Now, there was a story, not a story, it came out of John Cena's mouth that John Cena wanted to do 220 dates, but he only was required by WWE to do 36 because they told him, we only need you for 36. That's wild, and I agree with that. That's stupid. And you telling me you could not find a medium to where you could have did like 100 dates or even just doubled it and made it like 70, 75 dates, which I think would have been appropriate since you don't really do house shows no more and no really live events anymore. That's insane to me. But even with that being said, if you take all that away, John Cena had a great final year, and I would say the greatest final year in WWE history.
Man, what the fuck is you talking about?
What the fuck was that?
I'm sorry, man. I wasn't thinking about it.
And I know you might be looking like, what the fuck are you talking about? Are you smoking that stuff? No, I'm telling you. John Cena had a great final year. Let me remind you. Let's go to a guy by the name of Adam Copeland. You might know him as Edge. Now, Edge is not retired. He's still an active wrestler, but let's go over his final year. So go back to like 2022. 2022, the Judgment Day turns on Edge, which in hindsight probably was the best idea because WWE Creative ruined the direction that Edge had for his own group that was his creation because they wanted to make his group a mythical Undertaker, Kane-like type goth group. Like Edge had no desire to do that, but he played ball and he tried to make it work, but it didn't. And so Judgment Day turns on Edge. Edge goes back to being face after being heel for like 4 or 5 months. And he feuds with the Judgment Day for the rest of the year. So we go into 2023, and of course, he gets eliminated in the Rumble. That's expected. He has a nice mixed tag team match in Canada at Elimination Chamber versus Rhea Ripley and Finn Balor, and wins that. Then has a Hell in a Cell match versus Finn Balor at WrestleMania to put a finality and end the chapter of the story between him and Judgment Day. But he wins. Now, you might be saying, well, he won. Isn't that a good thing? No. The purpose of the Judgment Day was to help create new stars. Why are you having Edge win? And Edge wanted to lose. He says he wanted to lose that match, but of course, Vince at the time, who somehow was not part of the company but still part of the company, was like, no, we're having Edge win. We're not here to make new stars. Why would we ever do that? And you know what happened after that? He disappeared. Poof! After beating Finn Balor, he disappeared. Like, he wasn't on Raw, he wasn't on SmackDown, he wasn't on any PLEs. After WrestleMania, after winning a Hell in a Cell match and winning this big time feud, they did nothing with him. They brought back the World Heavyweight Championship. The friggin' championship that Edge had to friggin' relinquish because of his neck injury. You would have thought they would have been like, okay, let's put Edge into this story of him trying to finally win the one title that he never lost because he was never pinned or submitted for it. Wouldn't that make sense to do that in his final year? He was there for 3 years. He returned in January of 2020, and he did not win the title once. That's all Edge fans wanted. Him to win the title one more time, and they did nothing with him. They didn't put him on TV at all. Then he pops up randomly in August and has a great match with Sheamus. And that's it, and he leaves. That's how they treat a Hall of Famer by the likes of Edge. That's disrespectful as fuck. That's a bad final year. Again, for a Hall of Famer, the likes of Edge. But shit, let's keep it on someone associated with Edge. Lita. That same year. You remember Lita was actually wrestling somewhat often in 2023? You remember that I believe she was the tag team women's champion that she won at WrestleMania 39 that year. Then she got taken out, which we eventually found out that same night was by Trish Stratus. But she got taken out and never heard from again. And she hasn't wrestled since. Lita, one of your pillars. When you talk to every women's wrestler and every women's wrestling fan, top 5 names you always hear is how much Lita inspired me. Lita is my favorite wrestler. Lita did this, Lita did that. And that's how you treat Lita. Lita just disappears also. She just disappears and never is heard from again. And now she's just doing panels and stuff. That's how you treat a Hall of Famer like Lita. Now, speaking of women, someone who always letting me know how much he loved women, let's talk about the final year of the Nature Boy, Ric Flair. Now, I know some of you looking like, how the hell are you going to tell me Ric Flair did not have a great final year in WWE? Well, let's look it up, shall we? Let's go back to the year prior to WrestleMania 24, WrestleMania 23. You remember that great Ric Flair match at WrestleMania 23 in Detroit? I bet you don't, because it wasn't on live television. It was on a pre-show. He was in a tag team match with Carlito in a pre-show. Ric Flair. Because Ric Flair had the nerve to speak up, I think on live television on Raw, and talk about the passion he had for wrestling. And I think it was the promo he had with Carlito about leaving the show before the show ended. And he kind of went off the cuff, and Vince got mad and said, all right, you know what? You're not going to be on WrestleMania. This is how he treats a 16-time world champion, what people consider the greatest wrestler of all time, doesn't put him on the grandest stage of them all at WrestleMania. Then he gets traded to SmackDown, gets squashed by Great Khali. Then he pops up about 6 months later to announce, I'm going to never retire. And then he started the Vince McMahon, the next time you lose a match, you will retire, which is a great story, which had a lot of potential. And it kind of treated Ric Flair like a joke. I mean, did not remind you, I think the first night he went against Randy Orton and barely won, or got DQ'd, or he barely won. Didn't beat the WWE champion in Randy Orton. Went up against Triple H. Barely won. Only won because of William Regal. Then he goes up against the likes of Mr. Kennedy and MVP, which no disrespect to them, but they're not. Nobody considered them future Hall of Famers or legends or even top tier talent at the time. So it's okay, well, there's no real stakes to this. There's nothing. Nobody believes that you're going to lose to MVP or Mr. Kennedy at Rumble or Elimination Chamber. Not Elimination Chamber. It was No Way Out at the time. But then he goes against Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon damn near beat him. If it wasn't for interference, I think by Shawn. So he did a whole retirement run where he could not beat anyone clean outside of the likes of mid-carders and MVP and Mr. Kennedy. Then he has this great final match at WrestleMania versus Shawn Michaels. But outside of that, it was, if you really look at it, it was a shitty final year. Like, they really screwed over Ric Flair. But you want to talk about one of the greatest in-ring performers of all time? Another person people consider the greatest in-ring performer of all time? Your Olympic gold medalist, your Olympic hero, in Kurt Angle. Do I need to remind you what his final year looked like? His final year starts off at WrestleMania 34 in a show-stealing tag team match with Kurt Angle, Ronda Rousey versus Triple H and Stephanie McMahon. Great match where Kurt clearly can't really go in the ring anymore. Like, he can't move. Like, his body completely wore down. But he tried his best, he tried his hardest. And like at the end of 2018, they tried to tell a story of him believing he had one more run. And then they did nothing with him. Like, he had matches here and there. None of them mattered. And then at the top of like 2019, he says, I'm going to retire at WrestleMania, but I want to have the Kurt Angle Open Invitational. And it was cool, but it also was sad. And also there was nothing on the line. Like, he didn't win the IC title, the US title, which would have made all the sense in the world. Never even went after the world title. Like, this is Kurt Angle, one of the greatest of all time. And you do literally no real story with him. He doesn't even do his Open Invitational and has a match with someone to where they beat him. Because not like if he loses, he retires. You didn't have anybody beat him, so then it's like, oh, I got to face you at WrestleMania. And if I can't beat you, then I retire. Like, there's no story. Like, yeah, he went up against like Samoa Joe and I think like AJ Styles, I think, if I remember correctly. But it's just like, they just had no real investment in Kurt Angle's final year. And then to top it off, they force him. Kurt Angle talk about this. They force him to face Baron Corbin in his final match. Baron Corbin, at this time, was the bartender, Baron Corbin. It's like, what? Everybody was like, well, it's got to be John Cena. John Cena's got to be Kurt Angle's final opponent. And Kurt Angle was begging Vince for it to be John Cena. And Vince, being Vince, was like, no, pal. If you want John Cena, you could do it next year. But this year, it's got to be Baron Corbin. Again, showing how much he respects the guys and gals that put their body on the line every single night for him. A Kurt Angle, who, again, a lot of people consider the greatest of all time, he told him, no, brother, it doesn't work for me, brother. You're going to go against Baron Corbin. Not a Daniel Bryan, not a AJ Styles, not a Samoa Joe, like, not a Randy Orton, like, Baron Corbin, Finn Balor. There's so many names, billion names in that company, on our roster, that you could have said Bobby Lashley. There's so many people you could have said. But Baron Corbin, because we're going to build up Baron Corbin. And I was there live at WrestleMania 35. I watched that match. I promise you, nobody can tell you what happened in that match. If you polled every single person that was there at WrestleMania 35, I put everything, I put for the fate of the universe on the line, that nobody can tell you what happened in that match, because it was a nothing of a match, because it's Kurt Angle and Baron Corbin. So again, that's a horrible final year. I want you to compare that to what John Cena did in his final year. On paper, he had a theme, he had an actual story of, I want to win the title and break the record of Ric Flair's and become 17-time world champion. So boom, we already have a story. So he goes in the Rumble, loses the Rumble. Goes in Elimination Chamber, wins the Chamber. Has one of the biggest moments in WWE and wrestling history. Turns heel after 23 years. Finally turns heel with The Rock. With The Rock. Turns heel. Completely breaks the internet, breaks the professional wrestling. The one thing people thought that Cena would never do in his career, he finally does. He goes up against what many people consider the face and the guy in WWE and Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania in the main event and wins title number 17 at WrestleMania. Then he goes on to face all his old rivals, matches people wanted to see. Randy Orton in St. Louis, CM Punk. Which, speaking of CM Punk, and the anniversary of the pipe bomb, John Cena does his own version of the pipe bomb, which a lot of people loved and thought it was dope for him to finally turn that pipe bomb on to CM Punk. And then they have their match in Saudi Arabia. And then he goes on to turn face after the fans and everyone rejected his heel run. WWE goes, you know what? Fine. We're going to turn John Cena face again. And he winds up having maybe, quite possibly, the greatest match of his career versus Cody Rhodes at SummerSlam. Passes the torch over to Cody Rhodes. Then again, he goes on to actually, as a babyface, has great matches outside of Brock Lesnar, has great matches with Logan Paul, has an unforgettable match, again, maybe one of the best matches of his career versus AJ Styles on Crown Jewel. Then completes the Grand Slam by winning the Intercontinental Championship in Boston versus Dominic Mysterio. And then, of course, in his final match, is going to face what many people consider the greatest in-ring performer alive today in Gunther. On paper, you tell me, how is this a bad final year? Off paper, you tell me, how is this a bad final year? Again, I'm gonna just run it down. Turns heel after people thought that would never happen. Wins record number title 17 at WrestleMania. Has 5-star matches with AJ Styles and Cody Rhodes. Has a pipe bomb segment with CM Punk. Wins the IC title and completes the Grand Slam in Boston. And now is going to have a final match with Gunther, which a lot of people believe will be a great match because it's Gunther. So you're guaranteed to go out greatly, unlike a Kurt Angle, unlike an Undertaker, unlike a lot of people. That's a great final year. I know a lot of people are mad because certain things didn't go certain ways, and I get it. I was frustrated too. But when you really look at it, Cena had a great final year, bro. Like, y'all gotta stop complaining. Like, only John Cena can have a year like he had, and people are still complaining about it. Only John Cena. John Cena fans, the C Nation, they also call yourselves that, are probably the most privileged, entitled fan base in the history of professional wrestling. Like, it boggles my mind. But no, okay, I'm done shooting, brother. I'm done with my little pipe bomb. But no, John Cena had a great final year. And the only reason why people ish on John Cena's final year is because of how the heel turn went. Which leads us to, you know what? Let's reimagine John Cena's final year, and what if the fans got what they want and John Cena never turned heel? Stay tuned.